Get out of my palace before sunset, Omega. Alpha King Alexander Blackwood's words crossed the marble hall with such cold precision that Emily Carter stopped breathing for a heartbeat. Every conversation around her vanished. Nearly 50 nobles stood beneath the silver chandeliers of Blackwood Palace, and somehow every pair of eyes had found the young woman in the plain gray dress. Emily lowered her gaze, wishing she could disappear into the polished floor beneath her shoes. She had spent 3 years learning how to become invisible here. Carry the linens. Refill the lamps. Keep her voice soft. Never stand where someone important might notice her. For an Omega like Emily, invisibility was protection. Her scent was so faint that other wolves had turned it into a joke. Some whispered that the moon goddess had forgotten to finish making her. Others called her wolfless when they thought she couldn't hear. Emily always heard. She had simply learned that dignity sometimes meant refusing to answer cruelty. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now back to Emily. She had not meant to approach the king. A young palace servant had stumbled while carrying a tray, and Emily had instinctively reached forward to keep the silver pitcher from striking the floor. That single movement had placed her directly in Alexander's path. Their hands had brushed for barely a second. Yet the moment they touched, something strange passed through the hall. Alexander had gone perfectly still. Emily had felt warmth race through her fingertips, followed by a sudden pressure beneath her ribs, as though something sleeping inside her had opened its eyes. Then came a sound no one else seemed to hear. A wolf's distant howl. Alexander pulled his hand away. His silver-gray eyes hardened immediately. Your name? Emily Carter, Your Majesty. Something flickered across his face. Recognition. Fear. Perhaps anger. It disappeared too quickly for her to understand. Behind him, several nobles exchanged amused glances. Carter won. Woman murmured. The scentless Omega? A few quiet laughs followed. Emily felt heat rise into her cheeks, but she kept her shoulders straight. Alexander should have continued walking. Instead, he stared at her as though she had become a question he did not want answered. Somewhere beyond the tall windows, a wolf howled again, much closer this time. Alexander's jaw tightened. Leave Blackwood Palace, he said. Emily finally looked directly into his eyes. Have I done something wrong? The question seemed to surprise everyone, including the king. For one suspended moment, something almost gentle entered Alexander's expression. Then the walls returned. No. That answer hurt more than an accusation. Emily swallowed and nodded. Then I'll leave. She turned toward the great doors, refusing to let anyone see how deeply the humiliation had landed. Behind her, Alexander released a slow, unsteady breath. And from somewhere in the palace courtyard came a third howl, followed by the unmistakable sound of something enormous racing toward the doors. The great doors had barely begun to open when something white flashed across the courtyard. Emily froze. A massive wolf bounded up the marble steps and stopped directly between her and the exit, its snow-white coat catching the afternoon light until it seemed almost silver. Gasps swept through the hall. Emily knew that wolf. Everyone in the kingdom did. It was Alexander Blackwood's royal wolf, the creature whose image appeared on banners, coins, and the black iron gates surrounding the palace. Yet the animal before her looked nothing like the distant symbol of power she had imagined. He simply stood there, broad enough to block most of the doorway, pale eyes fixed on Emily with an intensity that made her heartbeat stumble. Move, Alexander commanded from behind her. The wolf did not move. Silence settled over the hall. Emily glanced back. Alexander's expression had changed. The cold certainty was gone, replaced by something far more unsettling. Confusion. I said move. His voice dropped lower. Still, the white wolf remained exactly where he was. One of the guards shifted uneasily. Your Majesty, perhaps he sensed something. Outside. Alexander's eyes never left the wolf. There is nothing outside. Emily swallowed. She had been ordered to leave, and staying now would only make the humiliation worse. She stepped to her right, intending to pass around the animal. The wolf immediately moved right. She tried the left. He moved left. A nervous murmur traveled through the watching nobles. Emily stared at him. You are making this difficult, she whispered. One white ear tilted toward her voice. Then, To the astonishment of everyone present, the enormous wolf lowered himself onto the marble floor and calmly placed both front paws across the threshold. Emily almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the absurdity of the moment had broken through her embarrassment. "I am supposed to leave," she told him softly. The wolf blinked. "Apparently, he disagrees," someone whispered. Alexander heard it. His gaze swept across the hall, and the whispering stopped instantly. Emily looked toward him. "Your Majesty, what should I do?" For several seconds, he said nothing. She could almost see the calculation behind his silver-gray eyes. Alexander had commanded armies, councils, and every pact sworn to Blackwood. Yet his own wolf had just ignored him in front of the court. "Step away from him," Alexander finally said. Emily obeyed, retreating several feet. The wolf rose immediately. Instead of returning to Alexander, however, he followed Emily. She stopped. He stopped. She took another step backward. So did he. Something inside Alexander's expression tightened. Emily noticed it because she had spent years studying powerful people from the edges of rooms, learning which emotions meant danger and which meant escape. This was neither. Alexander looked afraid of understanding something. "Emily," he said. Hearing her first name from him felt strangely intimate after his earlier dismissal. "Come here." She hesitated, then walked toward him. The white wolf followed beside her as naturally as a shadow. When Emily stopped 6 feet from Alexander, the wolf stepped between them and sat at her side. Alexander stared down at the animal. "Return to me." "Nothing." Then the wolf slowly lowered his head. Against Emily's hand, warmth spread across her fingers, the same warmth she had felt when she touched Alexander. Emily's breath caught. Across from her, the Alpha King's face went completely still. He had felt it too. "Everyone out," Alexander said quietly. Nobody moved at first. His eyes lifted. "Now." Shoes hurried across marble as nobles and servants disappeared through the side corridors. Within moments, Emily stood alone with the king and his white wolf. Alexander waited until the final door closed. Then he looked at Emily as if she had somehow become the most dangerous mystery in his kingdom. "Tell me the truth," he said. "What exactly are you?" "I am exactly what everyone in this palace says I am," Emily answered. "An Omega nobody notices." Alexander's gaze sharpened, but before he could respond, the white wolf pressed closer to her side as though rejecting the answer himself. Emily looked down at the enormous animal. His pale eyes were calm now, almost patient, and that frightened her more than his size ever could. She had spent years around wolves. They tolerated her. Some ignored her. None had ever chosen her company. "Your scent is nearly absent," Alexander said. "I know. You have never shifted?" Emily shook her head. "No." His expression became unreadable. "And yet he recognizes something in you." Emily lifted her eyes. "Perhaps he is simply kinder than the people who raised me." The words escaped before caution could stop them. Alexander stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Not quite a smile. Something close. "He is not known for kindness." The wolf released a quiet sound and leaned more firmly against Emily's hand. She gently scratched the thick fur behind his ear. Alexander's almost smile disappeared. "Do not encourage him." Emily withdrew her hand immediately. The wolf turned his head toward Alexander with unmistakable displeasure. "This is impossible," Alexander murmured. He crossed toward one of the tall windows overlooking the courtyard, putting several feet between himself and Emily. Sunset painted the palace grounds gold, but his shoulders remained rigid beneath his dark coat. Emily suddenly understood that his anger had never truly been directed at her. Whatever had happened when their hands touched had frightened him. That realization should have comforted her. Instead, it made everything worse. "You still want me gone," she said. Alexander did not turn around. "Yes." The answer came too quickly. Emily felt something small and foolish inside her finally go quiet. "Then tell him." Alexander looked over his shoulder. "What?" "Your wolf. Tell him I am leaving because you want me to leave." The room became still. Alexander slowly faced her. "He understands my commands." Apparently not this one. His jaw tightened. Emily should have lowered her eyes, but she was tired of shrinking whenever someone more powerful entered the room. "I did not ask him to follow me. I did not ask for whatever happened when I touched you. I certainly did not ask to be embarrassed in front of half the court." Alexander's expression shifted. "You think I intended to humiliate you?" I think intent matters less when everyone is laughing. That landed. She saw it in the sudden silence behind his eyes. For the first time since she had known his name, Alexander Blackwood looked less like a king and more like a man confronting the consequences of his own words. Emily. His voice softened. She shook her head. You ordered me out. I will respect that order. She turned toward the side entrance. The white wolf immediately followed. Alexander stepped forward. Stop. Emily stopped, but the wolf did not return to him. Alexander stared at his other self, and something like disbelief crossed his face. Come back. The wolf remained beside Emily. Alexander tried again, quieter this time. Return. Nothing. Emily felt the wolf's warmth against her leg and looked down. You belong with him, she whispered. The wolf raised his pale eyes to hers, then deliberately sat. Alexander went completely motionless. Somewhere beyond the windows, the palace bells began announcing sunset. Emily looked toward the darkening sky, then back at the king. Your Majesty, if I am supposed to be gone before sunset, I should leave now. Alexander's eyes moved from her to the wolf and back again. For several long seconds, pride and uncertainty seemed to struggle behind his expression. Finally, he stepped aside. Take the east corridor, he said. The courtyard entrance will be empty. Emily nodded. She walked toward the corridor without looking back. This time the white wolf stayed beside Alexander. Relief came too soon. Because when Emily disappeared around the corner, the wolf rose, ignored his king once more, and silently followed her. Emily had made it halfway down the east corridor when she heard the soft rhythm of paws behind her. She stopped beneath a row of tall windows and slowly turned. The white wolf stopped too. No, she whispered. His ears lifted. You cannot come with me. She pointed back toward the great hall. Alexander is that way. The wolf glanced behind him, then looked at her again. Emily sighed and continued walking. So did he. By the time she reached the servants' courtyard, the last edge of sunlight had disappeared behind the Blackwood Hills. Evening settled across the palace grounds, cool and blue, carrying the scent of pine from the forest beyond the walls. Emily crossed toward the small building where palace workers kept their belongings. She had very little to collect. 2 dresses, a worn coat, her mother's silver pendant, and $37 she had saved inside an old sewing box. Everything she owned fit into one canvas bag. When she stepped outside again, the wolf was waiting beside the door. You stayed. He rose. Emily felt an unexpected ache in her chest. She crouched carefully, keeping several feet between them. Listen to me. I am leaving because your king wants me gone. If you follow me, you will only make things worse. The wolf lowered his head. You have a home here, she continued. So do not lose it because of me. A voice came from the courtyard archway. He cannot lose what belongs to him. Emily stood quickly. Alexander remained beneath the stone arch, his dark coat open against the evening wind. Without the court surrounding him, he seemed different. Still powerful. Still impossible to ignore. But tired in a way kings were probably never supposed to appear. I thought you wanted me gone, Emily said. I do. The wolf looked at him. Alexander exhaled. That sounded more convincing in my head. Emily almost smiled, but remembered herself. Then take him back. I have been trying. Alexander walked closer, stopping several yards away. He has never disobeyed me before today. Perhaps he likes difficult people. Then he should adore me. Emily actually laughed this time. It was small and surprised, gone almost as soon as it appeared. Alexander stared at her as though the sound had caught him unprepared. Then the white wolf stepped forward and placed himself between them again. Alexander's expression hardened. Enough. The wolf did not move. Return. Nothing. Alexander took another step toward Emily. The wolf immediately stood taller, not threatening, but unmistakably protective. Emily's breath caught. He thinks you are going to hurt me. Alexander stopped. Something painful crossed his face. I would never hurt you. The certainty in his voice surprised them both. Emily searched his eyes. You barely know me. That does not change the answer. The wolf slowly relaxed. Alexander noticed. So did Emily. For one strange moment, none of them moved. Then footsteps approached from the corridor. A palace guard appeared, saw the scene, and hesitated. Your Majesty, the council is waiting. Alexander did not look away from Emily. They can wait. The guard bowed and disappeared. Emily tightened her grip on her bag. I cannot stay here while you decide whether I am a mistake. Alexander's eyes dropped briefly to the canvas bag, then returned to her face. Emily, there are things happening here that neither of us understands. Then understand them without keeping me trapped inside your palace. His expression changed at that word. Trapped. He stepped aside immediately, leaving the path to the outer gate completely open. You are free to go. Emily nodded once and began walking. The white wolf followed. Alexander closed his eyes for a second. Of course. Emily reached the courtyard gate before turning back. I will bring him back when he gets tired of following me. Alexander looked toward the wolf, then toward the dark forest road beyond the walls. His face suddenly lost all trace of amusement. Emily, wait. She paused. Alexander's gaze had fixed on something beyond the gate. Do not take the forest road tonight. Why? Emily asked, her hand tightening around the strap of her canvas bag. Alexander crossed the courtyard with measured steps, but his attention remained fixed beyond the open gate. The northern trail has been closed since yesterday. No one told the servants, because it was not supposed to matter to anyone inside these walls. Emily followed his gaze. Beyond the iron gate, the road disappeared between tall pines, their branches dark against the evening sky. Nothing moved. Nothing looked unusual. Yet the white wolf had become perfectly still beside her. His ears pointed toward the trees. What happened yesterday? Emily asked. Alexander hesitated. Strangers were seen near the boundary markers. Travelers. They did not identify themselves. Emily looked at him. And you were going to send me out there alone? Regret crossed his face before he could hide it. I ordered you to leave the palace. I did not order you into danger. That distinction feels rather small from this side of the gate. Alexander had no answer. Emily turned away. She could return to the servants' quarters for one night, but every window there would carry whispers by morning. The scentless Omega who had been expelled by the king. The strange girl followed by his wolf. She had endured enough pity and ridicule for one lifetime. There is another road, she said. The southern road adds almost 4 miles. Then I will walk 4 more miles. It is already dark. I have walked in the dark before. Alexander studied her, frustration gathering behind his eyes. Why are you determined to make this difficult? Emily gave him a tired look. You told me to leave. That silenced him again. She stepped through the gate. The white wolf followed immediately. Alexander spoke his name for the first time. Orion. The wolf stopped. Emily looked down. Orion. Somehow the name suited him. Alexander approached and crouched several feet away. Come home, Orion. The wolf looked at his king, then at Emily. He remained beside her. Alexander's expression tightened with something deeper than annoyance. You have been with me since I was 17 years old, he said quietly. Do not choose tonight to become stubborn. Orion blinked. Emily felt strangely intrusive, as though she were witnessing a conversation between two halves of the same soul. Maybe I should go alone, she whispered. She stepped away from Orion. He followed. She tried again. He followed again. Alexander rose slowly. He has made his decision. About what? Emily asked. Alexander looked at her for several seconds. That is what I am trying not to answer. The honesty unsettled her. A cool wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of rain. Orion suddenly lifted his head. His entire posture changed. He moved in front of Emily, quietly blocking the road. Alexander noticed at once. What is it? Orion stared into the forest. Emily heard nothing except leaves moving overhead. Then a faint whistle drifted through the darkness. Not a bird. Too deliberate. A second whistle answered from farther down the trail. Alexander stepped beside Emily. The uncertainty vanished from his face, replaced by calm authority. Back inside the gate. Alexander. Please. It was the first time he had asked instead of commanded. Emily obeyed. Orion backed with her, never turning away from the trees. The palace guards closed the iron gate, and Alexander spoke quietly to their captain. Seal the outer grounds. No one leaves alone tonight. Emily watched him. So I am trapped here after all. Alexander turned toward her. No. You may leave at sunrise with an escort, if that is still what you want. If. The word lingered between them. Emily looked down at Orion. The wolf finally turned from the forest and gently pressed his head against her hand. That strange warmth returned instantly, stronger now, traveling through her palm and settling beneath her ribs. Across the courtyard, Alexander inhaled sharply. His silver-gray eyes flashed with unmistakable recognition. Emily pulled her hand away. You felt that. Alexander did not deny it. Yes. What was it? He stared at Orion, then at her, and for the first time the Alpha King looked as though the truth frightened him more than anything waiting beyond his walls. Something that should not be possible. Impossible according to whom? Emily asked. Alexander did not answer immediately. The courtyard lanterns burned behind him, casting warm light across the stone while the first drops of rain darkened his coat. Orion remained close to Emily, quiet now, as though he already knew the answer neither of them wanted to say aloud. According to every law our kind has trusted for generations, Alexander finally said, a royal wolf does not form an attachment like this without reason. Emily folded her arms against the cold. Attachment. Do not make me name something I have not confirmed. You keep saying things are impossible, but you will not tell me why. Alexander looked toward the guards. Inside, Emily almost refused simply because it sounded like another order, but rain was falling harder now, and Orion had already begun walking toward the palace. She followed him into a smaller receiving room near the courtyard. Alexander entered last and closed the door. Without nobles watching, the silence felt strangely personal. Emily set her canvas bag beside a chair, but remained standing. Explain. Alexander moved toward the fireplace. When wolves recognize someone important to them, there are signs. Familiarity, protective instinct, awareness across distance, and warmth. Emily asked. His eyes met hers. Sometimes. Her heartbeat quickened. When I touched you earlier, I felt it. So did I. And when I touched Orion. I know. Emily stared at him. How? Alexander looked away. Because I felt that too. The room seemed suddenly smaller. Emily glanced at Orion, who had settled near her feet with the absolute confidence of a creature who considered the mystery solved. You and he are connected. More deeply than most alpha wolves and their human forms, Alexander said. What he feels can reach me. Emily slowly understood why Alexander had been so unsettled. Then when he followed me, I knew. When he blocked the door, I knew. And you still told me to leave. Alexander's face tightened. Yes. Emily picked up her bag. Then sunrise cannot come quickly enough. She turned toward the guest corridor. Emily, you do not get to reject me for something I do not understand, and then expect me to stand here while you decide what I am worth. Alexander crossed the room, but stopped well before reaching her. This is not about your worth. It always becomes about that. Her voice remained quiet, which somehow made the words heavier. My family decided I was worth less because I never shifted. The palace decided I was worth less because my scent was weak. Today your court laughed because you ordered me away. I will not wait for another room full of people to decide whether I deserve to stay. Alexander looked genuinely shaken. That is not what I want. Then what do you want? He opened his mouth, but no answer came. Emily nodded sadly. Exactly. She walked toward the door. Orion rose to follow. Stay, Emily told him gently. For the first time all evening, the wolf hesitated. She crouched and rested her hand briefly against his white fur. The warmth returned, soft and immediate. He needs you more than I do. Orion's pale eyes remained on her, but he stayed. Emily left the room alone. Alexander watched the closed door for a long moment. Then he looked down at Orion. Do not look at me like that. The wolf stood and walked to the door. Alexander exhaled. She is leaving at sunrise. Orion placed one paw against the wood. Something tightened painfully beneath Alexander's ribs, a sensation that did not belong entirely to him. Then the wolf looked back. Alexander finally understood. Orion was not asking permission to follow Emily. He was warning him that if she left Blackwood at sunrise, he was going with her. Emily did not sleep. By the time the eastern windows turned pale with dawn, her canvas bag was packed again and waiting beside the guest room door. She had spent the night telling herself that leaving was not running away. It was choosing herself before someone else could choose her value for her. At exactly 6, she stepped into the corridor. Orion was lying outside her door. Emily stopped. The white wolf lifted his head. You were here all night? He stood and stretched as if the answer were obvious. You were supposed to be with Alexander. Orion walked to her side. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Of course you are. They reached the lower courtyard as morning mist drifted between the palace walls. A carriage waited near the gate with 2 guards beside it. Alexander stood several feet away, dressed in a dark coat, looking as though he had slept no more than she had. His gaze went first to Emily, then to Orion. He made his choice, Emily said. So I noticed. Alexander approached, stopping at a respectful distance. The southern road is clear. The carriage will take you wherever you want to go. Emily had expected another argument. His restraint made leaving strangely harder. Thank you. Alexander nodded once. Emily, about yesterday. You do not owe me an explanation. I owe you several. She looked at him. For a moment, the king disappeared behind the tired man standing in the morning cold. Then perhaps you should have given them when I asked. Alexander accepted the words without defending himself. Emily turned toward the carriage. Orion followed. No, she told him. The wolf continued. Alexander said nothing. Emily stopped beside the carriage door. Orion, stay. He looked at her, then deliberately sat beside her bag. One of the guards tried to hide his surprise. Alexander almost looked offended on behalf of his authority. Emily sighed. Alexander, please. He walked toward Orion. Come back to the palace. Orion remained seated. Then a distant whistle carried through the morning mist. Emily recognized it immediately. The same strange signal from the night before. Orion rose, his attention fixed on the road beyond the gate. A second whistle answered from farther away. Alexander's entire posture changed. Inside the carriage, Emily. What is happening? I do not know yet. The guards moved closer, not threatening anyone, simply alert. Emily looked toward the tree line. Through the mist, several unfamiliar figures stood near the old boundary marker almost a quarter-mile away. They made no approach. They simply watched. Orion stepped in front of Emily. Are those the strangers? She asked. Possibly. Alexander turned to the captain. The carriage stays here. Emily stared at him. You promised I could leave. And you can, when the road is safe. That sounds very convenient. Hurt flashed across his face. You think I arranged this? I think I no longer know what to think. Emily picked up her bag and moved toward the side path leading along the palace wall. Alexander reached out instinctively, but stopped himself before touching her. Where are you going? The village is 2 miles south. I can walk there without taking the forest road. Emily, wait. She kept walking. Orion followed immediately. Alexander called him once. The wolf did not even turn. Emily reached the old stone bridge beyond the outer gardens when the whistles sounded again, closer now. Orion moved ahead of her and stopped. The unfamiliar figures had appeared at the far end of the road, still keeping their distance, but blocking the easiest path toward the village. Emily's confidence faltered. Then Orion turned toward her. His pale eyes met hers with an almost human certainty. He stepped directly in front of her and refused to move. Behind them, Alexander's voice carried through the morning mist. Emily, please come back. She turned. The Alpha King was running toward them alone, without crown, court, or command in his voice. And for the first time, Emily realized he was not afraid she would discover the truth. He was afraid he had waited too long to tell her. Tell me now, Emily said. Alexander stopped several feet from her, breathing hard from the run, his silver-gray eyes moving briefly toward the distant figures before returning to her. Orion remained between Emily and the road, calm but unyielding. The strangers are not why I came after you, Alexander said. Then why? He looked at Orion. Because he understood before I did. Emily felt the morning air turn strangely still. Understood what? Alexander stepped closer, slowly enough that she could have moved away. Yesterday, when you touched my hand, I felt a bond begin. I denied it because your scent did not match anything I had been taught to expect. Then Orion chose you. He blocked the door. He followed you. He refused every command that would separate you from him. Emily swallowed. You called it an attachment. I was afraid to call it what it was. Alexander's voice softened. Recognition. The words settled between them. Emily looked at Orion. Recognition of what? Alexander held her gaze. A mate bond. Emily forgot the figures on the road. She forgot the mist, the palace, even the canvas bag hanging from her shoulder. No, that was my response too. I have almost no scent. I have never shifted. I know. People like me do not become mates to Alpha Kings. Something changed in Alexander's face. People taught you that. The bond did not. Emily stared at him, unable to answer. Orion turned and gently touched his nose to her hand. Warmth spread through her fingers again. This time Alexander visibly reacted, pressing a hand against his chest. Emily felt the same pulse beneath her ribs. One heartbeat. Then another. Not identical, but answering each other. You feel that? She whispered. Every time. Alexander slowly extended his hand, then stopped before reaching her. May I? The question mattered more than Emily expected. Yesterday, he had commanded her to leave. Now the most powerful alpha in the kingdom was waiting for permission to touch her hand. Emily nodded. Their fingertips met. Warmth moved through her immediately, deeper than before, but gentle. Orion released a quiet breath and sat beside them. Emily closed her eyes for 1 second. There was no thunder, no magical spectacle, only a sudden sense of familiarity, so profound it almost hurt. When she opened her eyes, Alexander looked equally shaken. That is why you wanted me gone, she said. Yes. Because I might be your mate. Because if you were, everything I believed about duty, bloodlines, and what a royal bond was supposed to look like would change. Emily pulled her hand away. So you chose your beliefs over me. Alexander did not defend himself. Yesterday, yes. The honesty stung, but she respected it more than another excuse. Beyond Orion, the distant strangers began retreating down the road as palace guards approached from the outer grounds. Whatever threat they had represented faded into the mist without confrontation. Alexander barely noticed. I cannot undo what I said in that hall, he continued. I cannot erase the laughter you heard. But I can stop pretending my fear gives me the right to decide your future. Emily studied him. And what happens now? Alexander glanced toward the palace doors nearly a quarter mile behind them. Now you choose. Choose what? Whether you leave. His voice was steady, though his eyes were not. Whether you stay. Whether you ever forgive me. Even whether this bond means anything to you. Emily looked down at Orion. The white wolf leaned gently against her leg. And if I leave? Alexander was silent for a moment. Then no one will stop you. Orion looked sharply at him. Alexander almost smiled. I will explain it to him somehow. Emily felt an unexpected laugh rise in her throat. Then Alexander's expression became serious again. A bond may tell me who you are to my wolf, Emily. It does not give me ownership of your choice. For the first time since entering Blackwood Palace 3 years earlier, Emily did not feel invisible. She felt seen. And somehow that was more frightening than being rejected. Emily looked toward the southern road. The mist was thinning now, revealing wet pine trees, the old boundary stones, and the narrow path that could carry her away from Blackwood before breakfast. Freedom was right there. For years, she had imagined freedom as a place where nobody knew she was the scentless Omega, where nobody watched for a wolf that never appeared, where her worth did not depend on what she lacked. Yet standing beside Orion, with Alexander waiting instead of commanding, she understood something she had never considered. Freedom could also mean choosing to stay when leaving was no longer required. I am not ready to call you my mate, she said. Alexander's expression remained steady, though disappointment flickered behind his eyes. Then do not. And I am not ready to forgive yesterday. You should not forgive something merely because I regret it. Emily studied him. You were surprisingly reasonable when you stopped giving orders. A quiet laugh escaped him. I have been informed that I need practice. Orion looked between them. Emily smiled despite herself. By him. Repeatedly. She adjusted the canvas bag on her shoulder. I want my old position ended. Alexander blinked. Ended. If I return, I will not go back to carrying linens while the court whispers that I stayed because the king took pity on me. Agreed. I want my own room. Of course. And nobody announces anything about this bond until I understand what it means. Alexander nodded. Not one word without your permission. Emily narrowed her eyes. You agreed very quickly. Emily, I ordered you away yesterday because I was afraid of a truth I could not control. I am not making that mistake twice. The words settled warmly inside her, not because they were romantic, but because they were accountable. She looked past him toward the palace. The great doors stood open in the distance. Yesterday, she had walked toward them carrying humiliation. Now she could return by choice. There is one more condition, she said. Alexander waited. If your court laughs at another Omega the way they laughed at me, I want the right to speak. Something proud and almost gentle entered his expression. You will never need permission for that. Emily took a slow breath. Then she turned toward the palace. Orion immediately fell into step beside her. Alexander remained where he was. After several yards, Emily glanced back. Are you coming? For the first time that morning, the Alpha King looked completely unprepared. Then he followed. They crossed the courtyard together as servants and guards quietly watched. No proclamation was made. No royal announcement echoed through the halls. Emily preferred it that way. When they reached the same great doorway Orion had blocked the day before, she stopped. The memory returned instantly. Alexander's cold command, the laughter, her desperate wish to disappear. Orion moved toward the threshold and sat exactly where he had before. Emily looked at him. Seriously? Alexander sighed. Apparently we are doing this again. But Orion was watching Alexander now. The meaning was unmistakable. Alexander understood. He walked around the wolf and stopped before Emily, leaving the doorway completely open behind him. Then, to the astonishment of everyone watching from the hall, the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. Emily's breath caught. Alexander, what are you doing? He looked up at her, not as a king addressing an Omega, but as a man correcting the choice he had made in this exact place. Yesterday, I stood here and decided for you. His voice carried through the silent hall. I will not do that again. Emily felt tears gather, but she did not look away. Alexander extended his hand without touching hers. This time, Emily, the choice to stay is yours. She looked at the open doorway behind her, then at the palace ahead, and finally at Orion. The white wolf rose and stepped away from the threshold. He was no longer blocking the door. He did not need to. Emily placed her hand in Alexander's. Warmth answered beneath her ribs. Then I choose to stay, she whispered. But I stay as myself. Alexander rose, still holding her hand gently. That is the only way I want you here. Orion walked between them into the palace, his white tail sweeping happily behind him. Emily laughed through her tears and followed. For the first time in her life, no one had chosen her because she was an Omega, a servant, or a possible Luna. She had been given something far rarer, the right to choose herself. And beside her walked a king who was finally learning that true strength was not proven by making someone stay, but by opening the door and hoping they would.